Well, joining us now for more is Professor Tamar Herman, Senior Research Fellow at the Israel Democracy Institute, speaking to us from Give It Time. Professor Herman, thanks for joining us. Maybe let's start, though, with noting a lot of people would have doubted that this coalition, this government, would have even reached the point where you could do a one-year report card on it, and that maybe says something.
Yeah, actually, we were not sure that we will be able to summarize a year because throughout this year there were many moments in which the public felt, and what we do, we are measuring the public perceptions that it will not last more than a couple of months, then half a year, 6 months, and then a full year. But it seems that the situation right now is even less promising than it was throughout the way. And as you mentioned correctly, the views of those who voted for the parties which are now in the opposition see things in a totally different way than those who voted for the parties that are now in the coalition. This means that it is not the subject that we are asking them about, but where do they stand politically along the political continuum, which is quite binary. In the opposition or in the coalition.
Right. It's really binary. It's a tremendously partisan time. Let's start looking at the graphics. Of course, starting with the economy, always a key issue for voters. And we see that voters for the coalition, they feel 41.5%, 5% better, 30% said it worse, 17% the same. Complete opposite, even more so in the opposition, only 10% better, 75% say it is worse. But I would guess this is not bad news for the coalition, because if those numbers had gone against it on the economy, then they really would have lost their base support.
Well, you know that in Israel, the economy comes normally second after security, okay? So these are not bad news, but these are also not good news. And I think that if we look at it from 30,000 feet above, what we see is that those who voted for the parties in the opposition are quite in agreement with each other that everything is bad. The economy, security, the diplomatic situation of Israel, issues of corruption, the situation of the Israeli Arabs, and so on and so forth. They're quite unified in the negative view of what has happened here in the last year or so, whereas those who voted for the parties in the coalition are quite split. They are not unanimous on all these issues, which in a way makes it much more difficult to mobilize them to support full-heartedly this government.
Right. Now, I want to move on to the next one. Tensions with this is within Israeli society. I think this one is quite interesting, and not in a good way for the government, because those who voted for coalition members say 28% say the situation is better, 48% say it's worse, 22% the same. And of course, in the opposition, only 9% better, 72% worse. And why I think this is particularly bad is that, of course, part of the logic of forming this very ideologically diverse coalition, according to, for example, Prime Minister Bennett, alternate Prime Minister Yair Lapid, is that having this diverse government could reduce the tensions in Israeli society. And it looks like, unfortunately, it's even perhaps had the opposite effect.
As you can see on both sides, they see it in a very negative way. The increase of the tension between the various tensions between the groups, which is mainly, you can say that it's for Bibi or against Bibi, right? And this cleavage has intensified in the last year or so, as well as the propaganda against the Bennett-led government. So I think that this feeling that is shared by the voters of the opposition and the voters of the coalition is quite realistic. It is not something that they have invented from where they are situated.
No, right, but Tamar, could some of the voters have in mind tensions between, for example, the Israel's Jewish majority and its Arab minority, and we have a government for the first time that includes members, or a coalition, I should say, that includes members of the Arab minority parties, but it really hasn't helped the perception of that situation in Israel.
No, actually, it even worsened the situation on many levels. In the last 15 years or so, we asked the question that was presented to both Jews and Arabs in Israel regarding the inclusion of an Arab party with Arab ministers in the government. And we always had a significant majority of Jews against such a move, and a large majority on the Arab side that were strongly in favor of such a move. Right now, we see an increase of the majority against it on the Jewish side, whereas the Arabs are less enthusiastic about it because their experience in the last year or so was not so promising. So some of them are now saying we should avoid participating in such government. It's better for us to perhaps even serve as a safety net sometimes,
right,
but not commit ourselves to the coalition discipline.
Right. Right. So, Tamar, I want to then jump down to this one about if elections were held today, because that definitely impacts on those figures. Less than a third of respondents are sure that they would vote for the same party they supported in March 2021. Another quarter think they would. On the other hand, 20% think they would not vote for the same party. 12% said they don't know. If we break down the parties, we could see that Likud by far has maintained voter loyalty, but other parties, especially blue and white, Yamina and New Hope, they've lost some significant support. That is not good news for those parties in the coalition.
Right, but it's not surprising because we know that Yamina is split, not even in the middle, between these who support the moves that were done by Bennett in recent months and those who feel that he actually has stolen their votes, right? So Yamina is for very clear reasons at the bottom of this scale. However, for example, voters of Yesh Atid are quite satisfied of their representatives in the Knesset, as well as at least reporting that they intend to vote for Yesh Atid once more. As for Likud, it's quite clear why they are there, as well as, by the way, the ultra-Orthodox parties, because they are in the comfort zone, although outside of the coalition, because they have no argument with their representatives.
All right.